Today, we're going to dive into the story of one of the planet's most mysterious animals, the Okapi. And let me tell you, it's a tale of ancient, epic survival clashing head-on with a very, very modern crisis.
All right, take a look at this incredible creature. Not with those stripes, you'd be forgiven for thinking it's some kind of forest zebra, right? But nope, you'd be mistaken. This is the Okapi, and its only living relative is, believe it or not, the giraffe. It's so secretive, so elusive, that the very first photo of one in the wild wasn't even taken until 2008. Just think about that.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll unpack the Okapi's really unique spot in the animal kingdom and dig into its surprising genetic history. Then, we're going to journey to its main sanctuary to see exactly what threats it's up against and meet the people literally on the front line fighting to save it. And finally, we'll ask the big question. What does the future really hold for this ancient animal?
Okay, let's start with the puzzle of the Okapi's past. You'll hear it called a living fossil, and for a really good reason. It's this incredible evolutionary marvel that gives us a direct window into Africa's deep, deep history. Now, here's where the story gets really interesting. So while the Okapi and giraffe are cousins, they took completely different paths evolutionarily. You've got the giraffe towering up to 6 meters high out on the open savanna, and then you have the Okapi standing at about 1.5 meters, a total master of disguise deep in the rainforest. Their common ancestor lived 11 to 12 million years ago, which makes how different they are today just fascinating. And this is where the puzzle gets even deeper. See, normally when a species becomes endangered, its genetic diversity just tanks. It's a huge problem for survival. But a 2014 study found the Okapi is this wild exception. It has incredibly high genetic diversity. So the big question is, how is that possible? Well, the answer seems to lie in the ice ages. Scientists think that as the climate changed and the Congo rainforest shrank, these little pockets of forest survived in isolated refuges. Different groups of Okapis basically hunkered down in these separate areas, and in doing so, they preserved all these distinct genetic lines. It just goes to show you the Okapi's incredible resilience. This is a species that has weathered huge natural changes and carries a genetic toolkit that could be the key to its future. But here's the thing. After surviving millennia of natural change, the Okapi now faces a totally modern siege. Its main stronghold, the Okapi Wildlife Reserve, is supposed to be a sanctuary, but right now, it's a paradise under attack. So, the Okapi Wildlife Reserve, or the OWR as people call it, is a massive place. We're talking about the size of New Jersey. It was set up back in 1992 in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and just 4 years later, it was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site. On paper, it was designed to be the ultimate safe haven. And it's not just for the Okapi. This reserve is a global hotspot for biodiversity. It's home to forest elephants, huge populations of chimpanzees, 101 different mammal species, and over 370 species of birds. I mean, this is a world-class biological treasure we're talking about. But despite that protected status, the reality on the ground is grim. In just the last few decades, the Okapi population right here has plummeted by a third. So what in the world went wrong? Why is this fortress failing? Well, the answer is that the OWR is getting slammed by a perfect storm of modern threats. It's not just one thing. It's this complex, tangled web of crises that are just completely overwhelming its defenses. And these threats all feed off each other. You have illegal mining for things like gold and coltan, which just devastates the habitat. That's often controlled by armed groups who are part of the region's long-running conflicts. And that, in turn, fuels poaching for bushmeat and the illegal trade of Okapi skins, all while deforestation is just chipping away at the forest. 1/3. Remember that number. This single fraction represents a totally catastrophic failure of governance. The DRC's own mining agency started using an altered map of the reserve, a map that literally shrunk the protected area by a third, opening up huge areas of the forest to exploitation. And this decision, on paper, had devastating real-world consequences. Both small-scale miners and even larger operations, like the company Kimia Mining, have just moved right in. They've caused massive habitat loss, they've polluted the rivers, and they're all operating with permits that only exist because, on paper, a third of this priceless reserve had simply vanished. And get this, even infrastructure that was supposed to do good has made things worse. The main road through the area, Route Nationale 4, was fixed up to help local communities. But instead, it's become a superhighway for illegal operators, giving them easy access to parts of the forest that were once remote and safe. And this all brings us to a crucial, sobering reality. This is conservation happening inside a conflict zone. With more than 120 armed groups active in the eastern DRC, the reserve's natural wealth, its gold, its timber, its wildlife, has basically become cash to fund their operations. It just fuels this endless cycle of violence. The damage to the forest is just staggering. In the year 2022 alone, satellite data showed that over 1,900 hectares of forest inside the reserve were lost. That's an enormous area of critical habitat, just gone in just 12 months. But this isn't just a story of destruction, it's also a story of incredible, unbelievable bravery. On the ground, there is a dedicated group of people who are risking their lives every single day to protect this paradise. This fight has been going on for a long time, and it's been marked by real tragedy. Back in 2012, there was a horrific militia attack on the reserve's headquarters that killed 7 people and 14 captive Okapi, and yet the work goes on. This year alone, rangers have already apprehended 118 suspects during their patrols. The absolute first line of defense are the eco-guards of the Congolese Institute for Nature Conservation. With support from international partners like the Okapi Conservation Project and the Wildlife Conservation Society, these rangers are out there conducting dangerous patrols, dismantling illegal mining camps, and confronting armed poachers head-on. But even with their heroic efforts, the official assessment, well, it's dire. The International Union for Conservation of Nature, which is the global authority on this stuff, has rated the conservation outlook for the reserve as critical. That is their highest level of concern. And this brings us to the final, urgent question. Look, the Okapi is a survivor of epic proportions, but its entire future now hangs on a knife's edge. Can it possibly survive the intense pressures of our modern world? The challenge is that it's all caught in this vicious cycle. Political instability fuels armed conflict. Those armed groups then exploit the reserve's resources to fund themselves. And this destruction is actually enabled by administrative failures like that altered map. All the while, the brave people on the ground trying to protect it are just outmanned and outgunned. You know, we started this by marveling at the Okapi's ancient genetic resilience, its incredible ability to adapt and survive natural disasters like the ice ages. But the threats it faces today aren't natural at all. They're entirely human-driven. So we're left with one final, sobering question. This creature survived millennia of change, but can it survive us?